Hey everybody, welcome to Tequiladies Tuesday. We're so excited, but first I have to do a little bit of finagling here, so 1 second. Okay, here I am. Let me invite my co-host. And there you are.
So it kind of worked. The
Eh,
theory kind of worked.
Yeah, and now I'm going to invite our guest, who I haven't even announced that yet. It's Steve Sanchez. He is a permaculture farmer in Southern California. He is in, I think, High Vista, and we're so excited to have him on. So let me get him invited.
We're nothing if not consistent. Because let me tell you, last week we had the California Agave Council people and some agave farmers on, and we got a lot of messages. And of course, over the past week, there's been some really good discussion, and that's always the goal here, right? Like have really good discussion. So when we had to reschedule someone at the last minute, we were like, well, who better than another California agave farmer?
Right?
And frankly, Steve was awesome. So Steve last week caught our attention because he was commenting on everything from the prior week. And, we're sitting here Friday, Saturday night, and I was like, Heidi, what do you think? He sounds pretty good. And we asked
Yeah.
him, and he was like, sure. And here we are.
And I
So,
think we've both been talking to him, so we've kind
yeah,
of learned a little bit about what he's doing, and he's really doing some great things.
really good things. And I think also,
Mm-hmm.
we often talk to brands, and brands are very cool. But it's also really cool to hear from other sides of the business as well, right? So eventually, actually, in April, we have someone who is the tequila buyer for a retail location, which is really cool, in my opinion. Um,
Oh.
yeah, so it's just cool to get, like, he's like one of the ones who was like, we need to get puntas. So, like,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, it's
Yeah,
very
for
cool to
sure.
see
Oh,
that.
there's so many people on here. Hello from Oceanside. Okay, so I
Oceanside.
invited you, Steve. I
Steve, where
don't
you
know.
at?
I don't know where you at.
Is he not on it? Let's see. Maybe he's with his goats. Hold on.
Maybe he's with his goats
Maybe he's with his goats
or the emus.
or the
Hi,
emus.
Sissy. My sister's on here. Hello.
Ah, while we're
Frijolito
waiting,
beans. That's a good name.
what's that?
Frijolito beans.
Frijolito beans, hilarious.
Yeah.
While we're waiting, if anyone wants to jump on while we go see if he's herding his goats,
Mm-hmm.
um, let us know. That's inclusive of you, Adolfo. Obviously, feel free. Yeah, let me message him and make sure he knows what's up. So his
Hopefully
page is
he.
really cool. His page is really cool too. Oh, look, he just joined. Perfect. His page is really cool too. I think what you should try to do is go look at one of his videos, particularly the one with like the goats. Um, that one just had me laughing really hard. I don't know if he intended it to be funny or not, but it was really funny to me. All right, so Steve is in the building. We just need to get him in the room. Steve, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are
How are you
you?
doing? Great, great. Yeah, just getting some stuff ready to go to the farm.
Awesome. Wait, you have eyes. I'm so used to seeing you in this. That's really cool.
Yeah, I wear sunglasses a lot because I have eye problems, so it's like really messed up like on the sun on my eyes, but um
Yeah.
most of the time, indoors I don't have to use them, thankfully.
Well, you and me both. I have terrible eyesight. I like actually can barely see right now.
Me
But
too. I just took my glasses off because they start just bugging me wearing them, but I'll put them
yeah,
on if I need them.
yeah. If I have a hat on, like forget it. It like pushes down on the bridge. So I made the decision. Hat that I just got over
Right.
Oh
vision.
I
yeah,
can
the
already
desert is
tell
always.
right off the bat, Steve, that you have that like really chill California vibe.
Yeah, we're all pretty chill over here in California.
Yeah.
Well, we have two things that we do to start the show. You probably know because you've been watching, but first and foremost, we like to smile like an asshole. So that is where we smile for 10 seconds straight, skipping the number 6 because it's an inside joke with the people who tried to make fun of me. Because one time I was counting to 10 and I skipped the number 6 by accident in Spanish. So jokes on them. And then after that, we will say what we're drinking. But I am going to grab just a bottle of Don Vicente for the picture because I just got
Oh,
it and
nice.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I
Um,
saw the video. That looks great.
yeah, I get
What do I want to hold?
so I have a mail room because I live in a big building, and the mail lady was like, "You really need to pick up your packages," and I was like, "I didn't get that much stuff." And she goes, "No, you really need to pick up your packages." And I went, and that like Cierto thing, like I had to like do like cleans with it. That thing was enormous.
No,
That
yeah,
So
was like
that was
crazy.
super nice briefcase. I like want one of those to carry my bottles around.
I know, and I didn't
Yeah.
even know, like, I wasn't expecting it, frankly. So, like, I kind of tossed it around a little bit because it was so heavy. I was like throwing it to like get it into my apartment, and then it
Yeah, it
was
looks super
my.
legit. Yeah, like I was thinking, I'm like, oh, I'm always just stuffing a bottle in like a little plastic bag and just running off with it. I'm like, I need to get more legit about it.
Yeah, like a
Buy
big
Yeah.
myself a
freaking
briefcase.
suitcase. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just feel
Yeah.
like if I walked around with that, people would think I was up to no good, but they'd be
Well,
right.
imagine you show up to the party and you just unload it, it's like, like gold bars or something.
Yeah, it's like click, click, because it makes a really loud clicking sound. It's like click, 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 click. Ah.
Marissa, I think next time we're together, we should walk around with them together. They sent me one, too.
You
Yeah,
know,
and
Heidi,
the
I
like
should take them
nice,
both and do shoulders, like
yes.
traps.
But
nice
I thought
workout
the
with them.
same thing. It was just like, what did they send me? Because I knew they were sending bottles just to do like some videos, but I didn't know they were sending that. So it was a surprise for sure.
Yeah, they sent me an email. They're like, hey, do you want to do a review? And I said, no.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, we'll send you bottles. And I was like, still no, but you can send me the bottles. And they're like,
Uh-huh.
okay.
But you're gonna post about it.
I just posted because honestly, like I was wearing a turtleneck today. Like I just
Uh-huh.
recorded that right before this. I was wearing a turtleneck and I was like, Hans from Die Hard. And I really want to record a video looking like Hans from Die Hard. So
You
here we
look
are.
really pretty. I was gonna comment on there.
Really? Because I haven't washed my hair since Friday. So I'll take that as a compliment from the hairdresser. Thank you. Or Saturday? Whatever. Anyway, let's smile like assholes, shall we?
I'm gonna hold
Sure,
Alma
sure.
de Jaguar because I'm wearing their hat, so I'm just gonna hold it.
I want that bottle so bad.
I know the Jaguar.
But love the one you're with, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you have
All
a
right.
super nice one.
Don't
Yeah, I just picked up this one. It's a Lalo. You
Lalo,
guys
yeah.
have actually reviewed it before, but
Yeah.
somebody
We love
recommended it to me in person, and I was like trying it. It's really good.
All
it
right,
is
I'm gonna hold
really
the
good.
Lalo too in solidarity.
In solidarity.
All right, ready?
Yes.
Steady. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, no seis, siete, ocho, nueve, diez. Bam. All right, that's done. Now, actually, I should be drinking Sholo tonight because Sholo just announced a Ho Ho Hoven, which is very cool.
Oh, ho 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 then.
Well, I called it a Ho Ho Hoven. And then
I
immediately
love it.
Sholo rolled up into my DMs and they're like, you're hired. And I was like, "What's your dental plan?"
Ernesto's like, we'll take her.
Yeah, tell my parents. Anyway, all right, so Steve, what are you drinking? Lalo, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, Lalo.
And so every week we also have people tell us what they're drinking and then who they're cheersing to. I don't want to put you on the spot. If you're ready, great. Otherwise, I'll pass it to Heidi to be ready first.
cheers as in like who I'm grateful for, or like what do
Yeah,
you
we just
mean by
toast.
cheers?
We just
Like
toast
Yeah,
to
well,
somebody.
toast to
toast
someone.
to the agave industry's future.
Oh yeah,
That's
salud.
good. Yeah, that's a
Mm.
good one.
Mm.
Oh, this stuff's smooth. Yeah.
Mm, this is
So
really good.
I'm drinking. I'm wearing the Alma hat, but I'm actually drinking Ocho Plata because I want to cheers to whoever buys the tequila at Brooklyn Bowl in Nashville, Tennessee, because I was there last night at a metal concert with my husband, and
It's crazy.
they had
It,
Ocho, they had the Reposado, and they also had Don Fulano Reposado. So they didn't have like tons of tequila, but they had two really good ones, and I was grateful for that. So good job, Brooklyn Bowl in Nashville, Tennessee. Salute.
Salud.
still surprises me how far tequila is being drank,
Hmm.
because like I was born in Jalisco, so it's like for the longest time it was just, in that region. It wasn't coming out of that region a lot of tequila, and now it's being drank in like Tennessee and New York. It's, really cool.
Oh
Damn right
yeah.
it is. On that note, I want to actually cheers to all the entrepreneurs and pioneers, and specifically the agriculture agave entrepreneurs and
Yes.
pioneers. Because frankly, what you're doing right now is entering an industry that many would say is mature, but making it nascent and starting at the very beginning and defining the rules. And
Yeah,
that's
well,
sometimes the hardest thing.
it's
So,
mature in Mexico, but here it's like a little baby, It's we're still crafting it. We have to raise it and like make sure it's a good adult, but like in Mexico it's already like a 50-year-old person, It's had its whole life. Yeah. But yeah.
yeah. And that makes it
Yeah.
difficult. And that makes it difficult because I think you have a lot of like pre-existing notions on what that means and what it should be. You have a lot of family history that you're not combating against, but it's a very cool industry, tequila, because it has all that history and
Yeah.
because it has all that. By the way, Alan, I'm wearing your hat, so cheers.
Hey, Ellen.
But
Yes. So
yeah.
you're definitely like one of the, oh, sorry.
Sorry. So
Cheers.
cheers to
Hmm.
all the agave entrepreneurs.
Ooh, a
And I
lot of
am
You guys
drinking
are
Don Vicente Repo.
Don Vicente Repo. I love
I
that.
need to try
Oh,
that.
wait.
That looked really good.
Didn't we taste their high proof? It was really good.
So it's out of El Pandillo, which of
Uh-huh.
course is amazing. They make G4, they make Volans, they make a slew of amazing stuff. So I
Hmm.
was just very much in the mood for an El Pandillo today. But anyway,
Yes.
all right, Steve, you're cool. Like I was telling people before you joined, one of the things that was interesting last week, we did California Agave Spirits, like in general. We had a
Yeah.
bunch of conversation
Really
around that.
interesting episode.
Yeah, and then you were all over the comments.
Hmm.
First off, amazing comments. Second, you were cracking us up with your content. Like, tell us about your journey in agave and what made you watch the episode last week.
Well, I started following, it's like I've been growing agaves for like 6 years, since 2017, and I didn't really know anybody who grew agaves like in the whole state, or in the United States, anybody. So I thought it was like something really, really like beyond niche. This is like super niche, Um, but then this past month, I followed Stargazer Spirits, and I followed Craig Reynolds and the California Agave Council, and I was like, oh, there's like hundreds of us going at this, like in different ways, like distillers, growers. There's people like you that are talking about the industry and promoting it, and I started to just see like, oh, okay, it's not just me in seclusion. There's all these other people, and I started getting really interested, about that, and exchanging ideas with everybody, seeing what was working for them, what was working for me, and like just kind of helping each other out. It was like this really cool community of information exchange. Um, and that really excites me. Um, but as far as like how I got into the agave, um, it's funny because I never knew about agaves until I was an adult. Like I turned, I think, 18, and I went to Mexico for the first time as an adult because I was brought here as a child. So like I heard about agave spirits from my grandpa and pulque, stuff like that, but I never saw any of it in person. It's just, memories to me at that point. And then I went to Mexico for like 3 months. Like I just told my dad I want to go see my roots and see, um, what we're doing in Mexico, because I didn't really feel uh, Mexican at that point because I hadn't really gotten immersed in my own culture. Being Mexican American is something to me that's a little different. You know, but when I went over there, um, it wasn't the most pleasant experience the first time with agaves because I helped my cousin and my uncle harvest agaves,
Oh,
and nobody told me like what we were doing. We just, like, I'm over here with my cousin and he's like, oh, we're gonna go to the rancho and we're just gonna have fun and we'll drink a little bit and harvest some agaves, and I'm like, oh, that sounds great, let's go. But when I got there, nobody told me that the whole crew was in triple clothing, like how I am right now, because it's cold in the desert. And when you grab these giant agave pinas, the root balls, it has all this sap when it's freshly cut. And I just was carrying them over to the dozer, and they're going through the rows and putting them in the dump truck. And for like 30 minutes, nothing, was going wrong. But then I started feeling like extremely itchy all over because I only had like one shirt,
I was just
and
gonna ask.
and the whole ride home, I mean, you can confirm with, some of my cousins and brothers, they were just holding my hands because I couldn't stop scratching myself. So
oh
like,
my God. They were
I
like
went home.
restraining you?
Yeah, it was such an intense like sensation. And then I got home and like I tried to shower, and I just remember it was like the worst experience ever because the soap would like hurt my skin, and I'm
Oh,
like, oh man, like this is crazy. But the next day, I started seeing like some of the processes of how they were making it into pulque, how they were making some of it into spirits, and I was like, oh, this is like a really cool process, and I started wanting to get more involved with it because I saw like the dedication that went into it. I was just so surprised at like how long it took, how much work went into it, and like at the distillation stage, like the amount of creativity that went into it. I mean, it's hard to compare agave spirits to a lot of other spirits because of that creativity that goes into it. Like there's no two agave spirits that are the same. That always is crazy to me. But yeah, my first experience with agaves was not positive at all. you know, um, and over those 3 months, I was immersed in farming with my cousin and my uncle, and I just started to love agaves because it was a way of farming that was pretty nonchalant. Like my uncle was running cows on a bunch of different places where he had agaves, and some of my family were running sheep and goats, and I was just like, oh, this is a really cool like ecosystem farm. Like they have the cows like eating some of the agave leaves and just foraging, and the agaves were kind of like a side project, and that's kind of why I mentioned in the comments too that like I'm kind of grateful for people like Patron and a lot of these big brands because even in that was in 2011. I'm a young person. I'm 30, and that experience was at 18, so 12 years ago. And even 12 years ago, I still remember my uncle telling me we were putting all the agaves in the dump truck, and he's like, "We're not gonna make any fucking money." He's like, "We're making no money on this harvest. Uh, we're probably gonna get out of agave." And I was just telling him like, how are people like Casavigos and these giant companies making hundreds of millions of dollars, and we can't even profit off growing agave. Um, But at that point, it was because there was an overgrowing of agave. Like so much people grew agave, expecting like a growth in the demand, and when that demand didn't come, it just tanked the price. So a lot of growers went out of business in that time frame because they didn't want to continue growing agave. And then a lot of the distillers, what they were doing, they completely changed it, because before the agave grower would grow his product and then go try to find a distiller and say, hey, I got all these agaves, what can you do for me? Now the distillers were starting to say, hey, if we don't support these growers, we're not going to have a product to make. So they started going to the growers and saying, you know what, we want you to plant these fields of agaves, and we guarantee you that we're going to buy them. So you
And
can
it's a long
confidently grow
cycle.
that.
It's a
Yeah.
long cycle. So the mismatch, I think, happens. Like we've heard from numerous people, right? We do this every week, so we've heard a lot. But like one of the things that we've heard is with the cycle, the last time there was a shortage, everyone went around and they're just like planting agaves like gangbusters,
That's
right?
how it goes. Yeah, up and down, up and down.
Right. And the shortage was like, what, maybe 5 or 6 or 7, however many years ago, that now those agaves are starting to mature and we have a boom now. So it's like,
Yeah.
but
okay,
so you, oh, sorry.
I was
Heidi,
going to say, no, go ahead. And then I'll say what I wanted to say.
No,
Finish
Heidi, you go first,
no.
please.
Sorry, she's Italian. I'm Mexican. We are good at interrupting.
We're also good at food.
I got ADHD, so I mean, you can cut me off whenever.
No, I was just going to say that, see, now I don't even remember what I was going to say. So just go ahead.
I was just going to clarify. So you were born in Jalisco. Then as a kid, you came to the U.S. Then at 18, you went back down to Jalisco to visit your family, which are agave farmers. Yeah. And you learned about agave for pretty much the first time. And I guess fell in love, right? Pretty much?
Yeah. Like I was about to go into UC Santa Barbara, and I was studying history at that point. So I was really into like just history, like, like another level. Like I was just, like my brain's a sponge. I can absorb, a lot of information really quickly and like understand it. So when I went down there, I just was like absorbing all of that, farming experience that I saw around me. And I didn't realize that until a couple years later when I started farming agaves, like in 2017. And I was like, oh, like, I was thinking about what I could farm in the desert and what I could do with just the land I have without bringing in a well, without bringing in a lot of, resources. And I thought back to my family. I'm like, these agaves are just growing out there. They're not even watering them. They're dry farming them based off just the rain, and they're making a profit. I'm like, I mean, if I can just plant a bunch of those and we'll see what happens, But yeah, I just really was trying to see it that in those first years when I first started farming, what the desert could take and how I could profit a little bit off that land, but not much because I was still gardening, and I still do. And that's the other thing with agave farming, like because it takes such long cycles. A lot of small agave farmers don't only do agave in Mexico. They also run animals. They grow fruit trees. They do a lot of stuff because they're waiting on the agave sometimes 5 to 10 years, and they know, okay, I'm going to get a payday in, maybe a big payday at this one point, but that's not paying the bills this month,
No.
So
Right.
they need to do a lot of other stuff. So
and that's the interesting thing too.
I was going to do that. Yeah.
Heidi, do you remember the guy from Herencia that came on? Like he left the
Yes.
military and then started growing agaves.
And he's getting ready to retire this year. And,
what's that?
And he's getting ready to retire, and he reached out after last week's show because he wants to talk to Craig, because I think he's thinking about moving to California. And even though he has his agave, place in Jalisco, he is very interested in getting involved in California and helping however he can, because he has experience.
Wow, I just got chills.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We should have him back. I would love to do, maybe we should do more California episodes too. Just
Yeah.
it seems like
there's a lot of cool people that, just go on the California Agave Council follow list. That's a little cheat code I did.
Oh
because
yeah.
once I saw Stargazer Spirits, I'm like, oh man, there's like a bunch of these people in California that are following the council. So
Oh
and I
yeah.
followed all of them
Yeah.
as much as I could, before I got bored.
If
But
you ever get a chance to go back to Napa, I know you said you lived there for a
yeah,
while and you were with, I think you worked with Charles Krug Winery and so did your dad.
yeah, my
But
dad.
if you ever get a chance to go back, you would love seeing Stargazer's property.
Yeah.
I
Adams
want to
They're
see
property.
they're pretty
Stargazer.
close to where my family lives up in Lake County. So I mean,
Yep.
I think I'll try to visit them at some point, definitely. And that's also really surprising to me that they have agaves growing so far north. You know, because a lot of people wouldn't expect in Sonoma to be growing agaves. And
No.
and that's what I was trying to explain to you the other day too. That with Napa, I think that they're going to be a really big player in like a decade or two in this space
Right.
because being involved with working agriculture consulting for some of these wineries in Napa, like the number one thing that they complain to me is like red tape from the Napa government. So
Hmm.
a lot of them are complaining to me, oh, they don't let me put a new well. They don't let me do, this clearing of a hillside. They want me to plant natives instead of, this wine,
Yeah.
which might be great, but they're just being limited to where I was before. It was like, do whatever you want, plant
Yeah.
as much wine as you want. And when it got to the point where Napa is now this giant center of wineries, now there's pushback against that. So a
Yeah.
lot of these wineries are starting to find different areas around the globe in California that they have more liberty to grow stuff. But
Sorry,
why
you
I
just
mentioned,
used the word California and
Yeah.
liberty together,
I
which
know.
I'm sure a lot of
oh
people
yeah,
are
yeah,
surprised to hear. But I
Right.
imagine that eventually, the government will catch up. If ever there's a
sure,
profit, they will find a way to like
sure.
regulate their way into it.
But
There
that's
And I
is,
why
think
it is
I
very
like that
strict in
Napa.
California. Oh,
That's why I
go
like
ahead.
that Napa might become a big player because you know growing an agave farm is going to take a lot of money.
Hmm.
Especially if you want to do it at scale, you want to plant millions of plants and you want a good product. Um, so when I think of who is best positioned in California to kind of like do this that has the resources already, it's probably a lot of those Napa vineyards and
Yeah.
wineries because they have the money. Most of their workers are Mexican. A lot of them are from Jalisco, Oaxaca, these
Michoacan,
places
all
like
over.
Michoacan.
Hmm.
Like they already have a lot of this expertise, and a lot of those people are like me that they have family or they worked in the agave fields and in the distilleries and the whole industry. Um, so they're in a prime position to buy up, a lot of land, in my opinion, and plant lots of agaves. They have the resources, and then start doing this industry big time. And I think
Somebody,
they will do it because of Napa, like I said, having so much regulation on them. They're looking for new avenues of continuing to make money. So
well,
aren't we
first
sorry
of
to
all?
all,
cut you
not to hate on California because I'm there, but that you do have a lot of regulations in that
yeah,
state.
yeah.
And somebody was asking last week when Craig was talking, like, hopefully it's not going to turn into something that becomes highly regulated and, mess it up
Hmm.
for everybody.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
California doesn't highly regulate anything.
Oh my
See,
God.
I
My
also think,
sister, my sister can't even they can't even barbecue on certain days, like,
oh,
when it gets
Oh yeah,
dry. But
we're definitely
yeah.
at the forefront of like
Do you
regulation like that. Yeah.
do you notice a difference? Somebody was asking about, is there a big difference in the soil in California, like versus Jalisco? I know when I was there, um, when I was just looking around at the terrain, it reminded me of Napa when I was in the
Yeah.
valley. Like I was
Yeah.
on the valley floor and like all the mountains were
Well,
around me, except for there was agave instead of grapes.
a lot of the best agave fields copy pretty much what Napa loves to do, which is planting on hillsides.
Mm-hmm.
Because agave, when it's grown on a hillside, it has this microclimate that a lot of people really highly value because it can grow, much better, and you have a lot of the same features, the erosion control, and you have the agave locking the soil in. But as far as soil, I think California soil is completely different, but it, that's a good thing in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
for instance, like um, in Jalisco, the soil can hold the water a lot for a lot of months. So when it rains in the summer, those agaves could be dry farmed because of that, because they're holding and locking in that water a lot into their soil. Um, in a lot of places in California, you're not going to have that, locking of nutrients in without external inputs like mulch or compost and stuff like that. Um, and I say it could be a good thing because um, you have much less disease and you have much less rot and you have a lot of less problems that the agaves in Mexico are being affected by. So like a big thing a lot of people don't know about is the agave weasel or weevil that is attacking a lot of agaves in Mexico. And when
What?
you think about it, if it's a really wet farm, it's one species of agave, it's a monoculture, and one of those agaves gets it, the whole farm is
So
done.
that's what I was going to talk about. I just remembered what I was going to ask because you were talking about the agave boom.
Yeah,
You guys
Yeah.
were talking about
Wait,
that,
hold on. I'm Googling
and
a agave weasel
yeah,
now.
and so I'm
weevil.
just kind
Yeah,
of wondering. I know that a lot of times when like the plants are attacked by
Yeah.
something, if they're like from hijuelos that were like from something else, it's a lot easier for them to get disease than if they were something planted by seed. So I think what's
sure.
happening is we're
Well,
seeing like this huge agave boom,
that's why the
but
genetic diversity is really key.
right.
Because, for instance, if everybody is getting their agaves how um, like for instance, how some of my family has planted their fields in Mexico. They get these giant trucks full of agave hijuelos from other agave farms that might be in the same city.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're planting hijuelos and they're all from the same agave, you think of the genetic variety, and it's very very low because you might have in 100 square miles all the hijuelos coming from these giant agave farms because they're the cheapest price, and then
Mm-hmm.
all the other small farms are planting these hijuelos, and they have the same genetics.
Mm-hmm.
So if that one big agave farm that's practicing monoculture gets a disease, it can easily pass to yours, especially if you're in the same uh, infrastructure. Like because a lot of these people are using the same truckers, the same distillers, the same jimadores. Like a jimador could pass it just by uh, using or working on a field, and then say for whatever reason he forgot to clean his utensil and goes to
Mm-hmm.
another field, it could spread it easily.
Oh,
So a
that's
lot of those
terrible.
things can happen as well on
Ugh.
the disease front. Yeah.
So someone
I've
in
heard that
California.
that is like an issue
It's
in
huge. Yeah.
Mexico right
Yeah.
now, and people aren't really talking about it.
That's
I
one
don't
of the
know.
big reasons why I planted like so many species because I didn't want a monoculture like that to ever
Hmm.
be, uh, putting me out. Because I would hear when the agave weevil was so big in Mexico, it's dropped down a bit now because now they're trying to attack it in different ways. But when it was so big, um, sorry, I was thinking about 2 points at the same time. I forgot my
I
point.
do that.
Yeah, but yeah,
Well, someone was saying that they're in the U.S. too. Sergeant Agave was saying that he lost an agave houseplant to them in California.
oh
Um,
yeah. I was just talking about
Scary.
somebody about him today actually. Yeah, about the weevils because I do gardening. Um, but it's a really big problem. It could threaten the industry because everybody's planting, only a couple species.
Is there
But
any other kind of insect that is a predator to the weevil?
um, I'm not sure about that.
You know how sometimes
Yeah,
when people are like biodynamically farming, like everything has its place there, and
definitely.
certain things are there, like the chickens are there to eat the bugs, and so like, is there a weevil eater?
Well, that's where the research needs to come in because I think there probably is. It's just there's not enough maybe research that's going into it. to like come up with this
Circle of
next,
life.
because yeah, like the weevil, it might have, a dozen different insects that eat it, and we just don't know about it, because nobody is looking at the problem, uh, scientifically, I guess. But
Not
um,
yet. That's
yeah,
where the
not
money
yet.
is.
Yeah.
The money is in the side industries, I'm telling you. It's
Oh,
like
I know. Yeah.
Romy and Michelle inventing the Post-it note. I mean, not really, but like it's all the little things, the supporting functions that tend to make the money. And I feel like with tequila, it's almost the same way. Like from what I've heard from agave farmers, it's hard. Like they're not making that much money, and some of the distilleries aren't either. A lot of it's in retail, a lot of it's in distribution. And so that's one of the pieces that I think California growers obviously face a lot more costs and expense than I think Mexico would, just vis-a-vis labor costs and any of the other pieces that go
You'd be
along with it.
surprised. You'd be surprised because, Cali gets hated on a lot for regulation, but I think we have some of the most affordable land in the nation, and that's saying something.
Really?
Because
Depends on where
if
the
you want
land
to
is.
farm agave,
Not in Napa.
yes. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, if I want to go to Jalisco and even buy 5 acres of land, each acre might cost me $50,000-$60,000. So already you're in $200,000-$300,000 for a 5 acre piece of land. Because in Mexico, people don't disvalue land very much. Like they know that you could farm it, you could build it, and the value reflects it a lot of the times in these regions. But I mention it because a lot of tequila is drinking in LA. And LA County, a lot of people don't realize has a desert in its northeastern section, right, of Lancaster, Palmdale, the Antelope Valley. And a lot of these areas, you could find land for, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 an acre at the moment.
Really?
When I bought, I mean, I was buying, a lot of land for even $500 an acre 10 years ago.
Do you have any more to sell?
There is a lot of
No,
desert, and
I buy for hold.
and even river, like, isn't Riverside desert?
Yeah, the Mojave Desert section of California encompasses, you could say San Bernardino, Kern, LA, all of these areas could do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I mentioned the affordability about land because a lot of people want to farm agaves in Mexico and will never make enough money in Mexico to buy land to farm agaves. But if you're in California, there's different ways of financing and different ways of getting this land that probably aren't available in Mexico. Because in Mexico, a lot of the times you have to buy it cash or you have to buy it in full. Whereas here, I mean, some of the first lands that I bought, were a couple $1,000s. They wanted $1,000 up front, and me and the owner had, maybe 5% finance. So a lot of people, they could start this farm for relatively cheap. I've probably bootstrapped my farm with, I mean, less than 100,000 in like actual money. Like I've probably brought in a lot of different things that are worth value, but just hard dollars, right? And in Mexico, I don't think that that's possible. And a lot of places in America, I don't think that's possible. Like Napa, you're probably not going to do that.
No, Napa, you're looking at like over $1 million an acre. It's crazy there.
They just want to leverage you up to your eyeballs in America.
Lake, yeah.
Yeah. I have a question, Steve, because when we had Craig and Adam on last week, I'm sure you did too, Marissa, got bombarded with questions and comments and concerns. And
I sent them to you.
Oh,
no.
One of the most frequently asked questions and concerns was, where are these agave farmers in California, like, sourcing their seeds and hijuelos? Because there were concerns about biopiracy, which I had never heard of that before, but biopiracy, and then cultural appropriation. Like, there were concerns about. Tell us about that and how everybody is doing it.
Can I just make a quick comment about cultural appropriation?
Most people, not everybody.
As like the white person in the room, can I make a cultural appropriation conversation?
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I don't understand how like taking someone's culture and like respecting it and emulating it is a bad thing. Like, isn't that a good thing? Like, imagine if someone said to me, Marissa, you're Italian American and I will never make, what do you guys call it? Tomato sauce. I will never make tomato sauce because that's your culture. Hell no. Make
But
my
No.
tomato sauce.
it's like those meme videos, you know. It's like I don't know if you ever see where they're just like asking Mexicans if in the street if they're offended by, oh, this person did this and that and that. Most Mexicans, they just laugh about it and they don't care. A
Yeah.
lot of the people, I feel like they get mad at it, aren't directly involved with it. They're consumers that just, they have a strong opinion about stuff and they feel everybody needs to know it, which is
Right.
great. Everybody has their opinion, but I don't necessarily think, they're seeing the whole picture.
Right.
Like, as far as, the culture, it's like I said, like my family still actively farms in Mexico, agaves, and they're doing their own thing over there. That's great. They do pulque and stuff, and I'm just like, you know, I see what I'm doing in California as an extension of what my grandpa started in Mexico. And I see California as like, an extension ecologically, like with Mexico. Like I think California, um, you know, historically was a part of Mexico, and a lot of the same people that were doing the stuff over there did it over here. So I mean, just because now there's a border and a different person in power doesn't mean that people shifted their cultures. Like California is Mexican and always will be. The Mexican people will always be a part of the culture here.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's like a way of honoring what we used to do. So
Totally.
That's what I think too. I think
yeah,
it's a huge compliment to like the culture for
yeah,
people, and it's not just in California. It's Texas, it's
sure.
Arizona, it's Hawaii, it's
Arizona's a
other
big one.
parts of the
Yeah,
world, Australia, where they're making agave spirits
sure.
because it's it's just a delicious spirit,
Well, that's
you
the
know.
cool part about
And
history because you can see like a lot of this stuff, like if you go into Arizona's history, you can see, the Hohokam and,
mhm,
there's this other tribe. It starts with an H. I forget, Halapai or something like that. But they roasted agaves and ate the hearts. They still do that to today, and they show their young people, in the tribes, this is our tradition. Like we're continuing our tradition. And a lot of those, Native Americans in Arizona, they would cook the stock and make it, into, sometimes like a product like sugar cane. Because when you roast the stock, you can kind of like consume it like you would a sugar cane. Um, and a lot of the flowers were eaten, and it's a delicacy in both Mexico, Arizona, and so in both, uh, USA and Mexico. And they also did all types of different things like make fiber out of it, and that uh, is done by the natives in America, but the fiber production is done in Africa, is done in the West
Right.
Indies and Indonesia. Mexico might have inspired a lot of these people, but it's been going on for a long time and all over the world that agave is seen as this plant that can, produce a lot of stuff.
And I feel
Um,
like there's a lot of examples of that in like just like all different industries of things that come
sure, yeah,
together. And it's not a bad thing. And if anything, it's a good thing, right? You sort of strengthen, just like biodiversity of crops, biodiversity of different heritages can actually be a really good thing too. I mean, if you look at Game of Thrones, the Targaryens didn't do any diversity and they had a big problem. And
they,
on that note, like Taco Bell made a pizza. If
yeah.
like that's cultural appropriation in theory, if we're going by that definition, but it was delicious, so I don't give a shit,
I'm
right?
not
Like
complaining,
I'm not complaining. Man. Okay, cool.
So
So
wait, so what? So where do you get your seeds? Where do you source your seeds?
A variety of ways. Like, most of the plants that I've gotten, maybe like 80% of them, I mentioned I do gardening. So, like, most of them, have come from gardens, I would say, and
Hmm.
people's, like, businesses all over, LA County and sometimes around California. So, like, I give an example. Like, just this week, I got a client for garden maintenance, and we're cleaning up the whole garden, and we go every week, or we're gonna start going every week. And he has a hillside that is just full of agaves. Like, nobody's been on the hillside for like 30 years. And he's like, well, I want to utilize this hillside now. I'm paying you a bunch of money every week. Go over there and take out as many as you can. And, how it works right there is, we're there for, say, 2 hours a week. And he told me, okay, hour and a half, go manage the garden. The last half hour every visit, I want you to just take out agaves until you finish the hillside. And that's such a common experience that, I laugh with people that like my farm is like, a reject farm. It's like where all the plants that nobody wanted in the whole county, like that I was gonna take to the dump,
It's the
ended up, you know,
maguey misfits.
yeah, it's like, most of this stuff, like I said, it would just be thrown away. So like
Yeah.
before, in say 2016, I started gardening, and I would fill up giant trucks full of agaves, cactus, everything, trees, and just take it all to the dump, and then they charge me like $120 to throw it away, like a whole truck. And I'm like, man, like, what if I didn't have to pay that? So then I did a job in Lancaster, and I saw like all this land for super cheap next to my clients, and I'm like, I, I think, I was seeing like all these YouTube videos of farmers mulching like super heavy their lots and just getting really great results. And I'm like, well, even if I can't farm right now, I could just start improving the soil, just throwing in, truckload after truckload. Instead of taking it to the dump, I'd take it to the farm. And eventually I started having something that wasn't sand anymore
Uh-huh.
on the top layer, and I could actually farm it. Um, but yeah, a lot of those plants were just rejects at first. People were throwing them away, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna recycle them. Instead of paying a bunch of money to take it to the dump and throw it away, whatever isn't useful to replant, I'm just gonna compost it in site or mulch it in site, and then every single cactus and agave that I got, I just started planting it, and I probably planted like 100 different agave species and like over 100 different cactus species, and like 90% of them died.
Did
Just
you
like,
did you just have a post about that, about your haul, like you did a job somewhere and then brought it back, or was that something you shared with me? It sounds
yeah, yeah.
familiar. Yeah.
I I that was pretty local to me. That was like 30 minutes away from the farm. Like I delivered like three agaves, giant agaves, to this lady, and she's like, "Oh, these are amazing, like I want them over here in this part of the garden." And when I walked over there to plant it, I'm like, "Why'd you buy these agaves? There's like 500 agaves just sitting right there." And she's like, "Oh, I don't like those. She's like, "I like the ones you have." And then I'm like, all right, lady, whatever. I'm like, you're paying me. You're the boss. So I started planning them. And then as I was planning them, I was making conversation. I'm just like, oh, how long you been living here? I like what you're doing. Because she's in the same locale. I was trying to learn. I was like, oh, she's got this fruit tree. She's got this cactus, this agave growing. I was like trying to be a sponge for, everything that was growing there. And then she's like, you're Mexican? You're from Jalisco? She's like, oh, my husband's from Jalisco. She's like, that guy drinks tequila like no other. He's like, let me tell him what you're doing. And then the husband comes out, and he's like talking to me in Spanish, and he's like, oh, ¿qué vas a hacer? ¿Va a hacer pulque? And I'm like, yeah, son pa pulque. And he's like, get them all. We don't want them. Just start taking them all out. And I'm like, all right, man, you don't gotta tell me twice. I loaded my whole truck up 6 times, and I brought 6 different F-150. The whole truck bed, 5, 6 feet high of plants. Hundreds of
First
them.
of all, that had to be a lot of work
Oh, it
to
sucked.
dig
It
all those
sucked.
out, because I've only ever dug out a nijuelo,
Whole
and that was
whole
hard.
body full of
So,
spines. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I tell people, as a joke, it's like, oh yeah, like, I'm only involved in gardening still to like just get free cactus and agaves, but um, a lot of the times, um, people that I'm doing that job for, they don't have any money. So like this lady was not a client that, most of my clients are like, I would say wealthy on the west side of LA, and they're
Hmm.
paying a lot of money for me to take care of their gardens. But a lot of the times, people, because they know I do free agave and cactus removal in LA County, they'll just call me and be like, I don't have any money, but if you want to come take out all these plants, I won't stop you. And I'm like, oh, say less. I'll go over there right now. And, I'll send either, my dad or a worker or me, and I'll get as much as they let me. I even tell them sometimes, like, I feel like I should be paying you, but the balance there is, if I were to pay or charge, say my normal rate of gardening, it might be a $2,000 or $3,000 job to get those 6 trucks of cactus and agaves out. So they don't have the money to do that. But if I go and I can get me a 10,000 in agaves and go plant that at my farm, that's a win. And I say maybe 10,000 in agaves, like in monetary value, because every 5-gallon agave I go buy is going to cost me 25, $40. And not all of them are going to live when you're experimenting. So you might buy, oh, let me try 30 of this spider agave. How I did one time, all of them died. So it's like you go 30 times, what I say, like 40. That's $1,200.
How do you know?
Right there,
like,
just dead, all of them.
Do you go in Google? Like, how do you know that that's a spider agave? Like, are you just like in Google, like, it looks kind of like this?
No, I'm not an expert on agaves, like identification, but I try to like do like what these smart businessmen that I've like some of my clients, to be able to pay me a lot of money to take care of the gardens, most of them are like businessmen. So like when they're in the garden with me, I'm like talking to them about business and like how to make money and stuff sometimes. And sorry, what was your question?
And just like, how do you know like which agaves you're even taking?
Oh,
Like
okay,
some of them, and actually to piggyback on a question we just got, like you can get some agaves and maybe you can't distill them, or they could be used for distillation. How do you know what you're getting?
So that's the thing. Like I was trying to mention, like I'm not an expert on the agaves, but what I learned from these business people is, if you don't know something, you have to find whoever is the expert in that and make them your friend, or follow them, or try to learn from them as much as you can. So, if I don't know a species of agave, the first thing I do is just like go on Instagram and like look up, there's various agave pages, but probably the best one that I like is like, Hidden Agave, Crazy for Cactus. These are people that like their whole life is, what is this agave? What is the history of it? How was it made? Who made it? Who hybridized it? And they love agave so much that they look at it a little differently than a, what is that, hidden agave? Yeah.
Hidden agave.
So
and can I
just
read you a
follow
few
these
people who
pages.
follow him? Let me read you a few people who follow him.
Probably
Fanny
all the cool
Camarena,
people.
Long Island Brew, Carlos Camarena, this girl Cami from Experience Agave, like some pretty heavy hitters.
Sure.
These are some cool people. Chris Maxwell, holy shit.
That's the thing. It's like
He has good
we might know
followers.
our agaves. We know the ones that we're more familiar with and we love to grow, and the ones we're experimenting with. But these are the people that we learn with to try to like see like, oh, like there's all these other cool agaves I didn't even know about. Like I give you an example. Like a few years ago, I was seeing Hidden Agave and all these other agave pages start posting about agave titanotas and agave utaensis. These really like spiky, crazy looking agaves that like people were buying for like $500, $1,000, and I'm just like, man, this is crazy. Like all these collectors are identifying these agaves that maybe nobody knew about, and then they're propagating them. They're going out into nature collecting seed. They might buy seed from a bunch of different places, and then they're getting this seed and putting it in greenhouses and propagating them, and that's what a lot of these agave growers are buying. Like a lot of these agaves that are in America aren't in Mexico. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of agave hybrids that are probably only in California greenhouses. Maybe there's a bunch in greenhouses in other states too, but when you have hundreds of agave seeds in such close proximity, you're going to have natural hybridization. And a lot of these guys, like, they've taught me. Like, I've learned from some of them that you can hand pollinate agave. So they're taking pollen from one agave, like, for instance, this is where it gets super interesting, because they're taking pollen from one agave and putting it on another one and cross-pollinating them and seeing what new stuff could come out. And as an experimenter, that's super exciting, because you might have, an agave that, has a trait that you like Salmiana. You're like, oh, I want this really nice pulque heart that, I'm going to cut the flower stalk and it fills up. It's beautiful and perfect. Well, say the Salmiana doesn't grow well in your region, but you know that Agave Americana grows well there, or another agave equivalent. Um, what would happen if you hybridize those two, and what would be the new agave that comes out? Would that be better in your climate, and would that do, would that combine the good trait and then give it the other traits of being able to do well in that soil? Like, nobody knows, but somebody's gonna start figuring it out. And I think the person who has the most species on one plot of land is probably gonna be like the person that sees the most of those hybrids,
Yeah.
just because they have so much flowers at the same time um, going
So
on.
Adam at Stargazer was saying that they've done the hand pollination.
Yeah,
That sounds like a joke.
I
It
know
sounds like
what
a
you. I
joke.
know what
nonsense.
you're think.
It's
I know
not
what
like,
you're thinking,
it's like a little
Marissa.
paint press, and they're like, it's hilarious, but I mean, it works. So
That's
it
what
is an
she
Yeah.
said.
exciting thing.
Are you, when you're harvesting all the agave? Somebody was asking, do you use traditional tools like a koa, or are you using something else?
An American flag.
Yeah.
No, I'm just using like was the Goa, like the circle, kind of like the
Mhm.
semicircle device?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm using like just a really sharpened version of that. Like, I just bought one like from um a local store, and then I sharpened the heck out of the tip of it, and I can harvest most of the agaves that I've harvested are not as big as the ones in Mexico. So, like,
Mhm.
for instance, the agave I've harvested, like, that was probably the fastest growing agave. Um, the thing is called agave. Let me see. It's called octopus agave, but the secondary name on it is like a really funky name. Like,
Calamar.
um, let me see.
The calamari agave.
It's Vilmoriana.
More.
Vilmoriana. So
Okay.
octopus agave is gonna be, I think, is a interesting one, because there's a couple key factors there already that work in the favor of the industry. So the octopus agave can go from a 5 gallon to a 8 foot, maybe 6, 7 foot wide plant in 4 years. And if you know what you're doing, like if you put mulch, compost, and you're giving it as much resource as possible, it loves more water than other agave species. It could grow faster, probably. Um, but that agave, the piñas are probably like, mm, like like a gigantic pineapple, like, the fruit. It's not
Mhm.
a big thing. It's probably only like this and this wide.
Mhm.
And those, I think, are going to be really cool because, one, they're fast to grow. You could produce a spirit with them quickly. But two, I already know people in California growing them and propagating them by like the thousands. So, like,
Wow.
I have a friend in what's the city? Fallbrook, California, down in San
Oh
Diego
yeah.
County,
Avocado
and
capital of
oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
California.
I
a
love
lot
Mhm.
of
avocados.
a lot of nurseries too over there. Every time
Yeah.
I go over there, I find a new nursery with like some crazy stuff.
Mhm.
But my buddy down there, he's growing. His name is Tony. He's growing a octopus agave by like the thousands. So, like, he harvested a bunch of flowers and the bulbs, and he's just been going putting the bulbs in 1 gallons, putting them into 5 gallons, and I bought a couple hundred, maybe like 300 or 400 plants from him like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and started planting them. And that's how I know that it could grow quickly and it could produce something relatively legit, as far as spirit. Um, but yeah, you have a fast-growing agave and you have somebody already available. Like if you have the money, you could go tomorrow and buy 2,000 agaves,
Yeah.
2,000 octopus agaves. You could plant 2 acres of it, and in 4 years you have your spirits. You
I want
know
to talk about
that that is impossible for a lot of the other species. And if you want to buy by mass production, you're most likely going to have to make them by seed.
mm,
You're not going to find thousands of agaves to be able to plant. Maybe it's some of these big nurseries, and maybe them seeing the demand, they're going to want to get into that. Um, but it's rare. Like I probably know a couple dozen of them that do it, but there's probably 100,000 nurseries, so
wow.
it's still very niche.
So
The people that grow them mass scale.
earlier we were talking about the weevil, and it just made
Yeah,
me think about, so you're farming pesticide free? Is that what you're
every
doing?
everything free.
Okay, so you
Like,
guys, when you go on his page, watch the videos, because he's like the goat whisperer, the emu whisperer. Like there's all of these different
well, I,
animals on the property. I want you to tell us about the goats and how you trained them to eat the weeds, but not the agave.
yeah, that was like a 3 year process, like trying to train. Like I bought a bunch of Boer goats and I started running them in my cactus fields, and they would just eat like everything. Like I was just extremely disappointed. Um, but that's what they do. Like the agaves that or the goats that I bought from that person to start out, I bought them from him for a reason. He does exactly what I do now, which is only feed. He's an arborist, so he cuts a bunch of trees, plants everything in LA County, gives it all to his goats. So he doesn't buy any goat feed, and then he butchers them and he sells a bunch of products, with his goats. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. I'm already doing the gardener and the tree thing. I'm like, I just need to add the goat thing. But why I bought him from him was that the gut bacteria of a goat is very selective. So like, if you have a goat eating all these trees and shrubs, the way that my friend Hector did, um, you're going to have a much better ability to accustom these goats to eating all of that if you do it on your farm. Because a lot of goats are only eating alfalfa, or they're only foraging, or they're only doing one way of eating. So I do everything. I put them out on forage. I bring a bunch of plants, probably hundreds of different plants from the garden and different trees, and that's what they'll eat. Whatever they don't eat, I pretty much mulch it in place. I build windbreaks out of it, and I kind of form like a semi-hugelkultur where like I have a sand layer and I'll put giant trees that I cut down, like the branches and smaller sticks, and then the animal manure and compost. And that's a way that I could build my soil in between the agave rows to not have to have any inputs. So like I don't buy any fertilizer at all for the farm. I don't buy any pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, none of that. Um, and I wanted to do that from the beginning. So even though like I was going to lose a lot, maybe with some of the animals being involved in this system, I knew that what they gave me was going to be really big. I just didn't know at that point how to do that. So I got the farms at first, and the first generation, like I said, they would just eat everything. But the second generation, it was like a 50-50. I started training them, and the babies that came out from the original moms, I would throw sticks at them whenever they touched an agave, to the point where every single time that they got close to it, they knew to look up. Oh, Steve over there. Oh, Steve's not here. Let me take a bite. But if I was there, I always made sure to throw a stick at them, yell at them, chase them. I wanted them to identify mentally that is don't touch this. And the thing is, like, they could eat everything else. I just wanted them not to touch one specific type of plant. So I feel like that's why it worked too, because they had to focus on not eating one plant, but eat everything else.
Yeah.
Um, And
And you
once I,
said that they are the real children of the corn. And I
they're
said
crazy, yeah.
you have to name one of the goats Malachi.
They're crazy. The goats are, they definitely keep you young, crazy little goats. Um,
So wait, I just want to
but
recap this. You have trained your goats to eat all the stuff around the agaves, but not the agaves.
you should see my farm. It looks like a wasteland right now because they've stripped everything except the agaves. People, and sometimes in the video somebody posted the other day, or I posted a video the other day of just the goats, and then somebody messaged me like, "What are they eating? There's nothing. It just looks like sand. Like it looks like you got all this mulch and sand." And then I put up another video just super close, and the goat was just eating like the smallest flower, the smallest like little ground cover, and like that's the point that I've gotten it to. So like I want the ground covered, but I want nothing competing with the agave. So all the
Right.
native plants are still there on the farm, growing around the agave, covering the ground, and the goats just keep it down to a manageable level. So goats are different than sheep, and this is one thing I realized because my family up in NorCal, my little brothers and my dad, they were running uh, hundreds of sheep on vineyards, and I started realizing that like they would eat down to the ground if you didn't move them fast enough. They would leave you with just dirt. So goats are browsers. They'll eat a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. Your goal is to just make sure that there's always something that's not an agave for them to eat. If it was just sand and they saw the agaves, best believe they're going to eat those agaves.
So
So
they
Now,
I
basically,
leave piles of forage, for them to always just be selective, whatever they want.
so they're your weed control in a way.
Pretty much,
uh-huh.
like
And we
what I
call baby goats are called kids, right?
Mhm.
So
yeah,
you
yeah,
have
they're
legal
called.
child labor.
Well, that's the thing, like I learned, like I said, through those sheep in NorCal that like like vineyards are a really interesting thing because if you set up a vineyard from scratch, you need like 1,000 people. Like, and when you manage a winery or a vineyard space, you need also 1,000 people. Like it's a lot of work every day from staking those fields to pruning to the weed management. And I started being in my head as a businessman. I'm like, every one of those heads out there, like I was the consultant, I was just managing stuff. But in my head, I was like, each one of those heads out there got 2, 3 G's every month that you have to pay. And I was like, I don't want to go through that. Like, so in my head, I said, okay, agave farming is like a low labor way of farming. A lot of the agaves are pretty much taking care of themselves. Uh, and when you incorporate the animals, um, you're going to get rid of a lot of those labor issues. So, for instance,
Yeah.
if my goats are going through my rows and taking everything down to just the ground level, and then I move them, I don't need to bring in which is what I used to do, a team of 10 with weed whackers and just weed whack the heck out of everything so it would go back into the soil, which is what they do in Napa. They'll put
Yeah.
sheep, bobcats, or a bunch of weed whackers through the rows and put everything back into the soil.
Yeah.
And, I said, okay, well, I could do that with the goats and I don't have to pay anybody to weed. And I don't have to use any gas in the weed whackers and it's less inputs. And then when when the goats are eating everything, it's a faster version of that because, for instance, if you weed whack or you bobcat mow everything in the middle of those rows like they do in Napa, everything's just gonna fall on the ground and take months to compost, right? Or
Hmm.
to break down and mulch. Well, when the goats go up and eat everything, they immediately are pooping that out, or something that they eat earlier.
Yep.
So they go up right to the agave plant and they're pooping right up against the plant. I don't have to spend any money on labor. Oh, go fertilize this row. Go fertilize
Yeah.
this field. Go weed this field.
Somebody
And
was saying that you could make a lot of money if you sold your goats to the farmers in Mexico. But
yeah,
I'm thinking the real money maker is
that's that's one
if
of
you
my
train
ideas. Sure.
the emus to like eat the weevils, That would be a huge moneymaker.
Well, the emus are not as easy to manage as the goats, as far as um, like like they don't- it's really selective what they choose, and it's hard to train them. Like emus
Yeah,
have a mind of their own.
they
Yeah.
can be mean. So when I was a lot younger, I think I was not even 21 yet. I was just looking for to have as many jobs as I could, and one of them was working at a bird farm, and I would have to feed the emus.
Oh
And
yeah,
when
the emus
and
are
they were
crazy.
grown like big, tall emus, and as soon as I walked into their area, they would all come running toward me and start pecking at my shoelaces, like my shoes. It was
Yeah,
very
we,
scary, but
you
eventually I
can't
got used to it.
you can't control the emu, but I've had a good experience with it because like when I say I can't control them, it's like I don't let them free reign when other people are at the farm for just liability reasons because they're
Oh
just
yeah,
an animal that can honor. It's like a horse or a cow.
they could be mean.
They can really hurt somebody, with their feet, and you don't want that liability as a farmer. But when
Mm-mm.
I'm
And
just
no,
there,
nobody warned me. They just said, go feed the
oh,
emus. And I was like, okay.
the, yeah, the first time I brought an
Send the new
emu to
girl.
my Yeah, the first time I brought an emu to my farm, that was an adult. I was putting it in a pen overnight because they all stay. Every animal stays in a pen overnight because we just have a crazy amount of coyote pressure. And
Mm.
you know, it was an animal that had always been free range, so it just drop kicked the heck out of me, and you know, I started realizing after that moment, like, yeah, it's probably not an animal for everyone. Um, but that's like why I compare it to a horse or a cow because a horse kicks you, it could kill you.
Hmm.
A horse, if you're riding it and you're not using a helmet and you fall off it, you could get paralyzed. Um, Same thing with cows. They lots of trouble. You have to be a rancher that knows what it's doing or knows how you're going to interact with the animal so it doesn't mess with you. So I don't put that pressure on anybody that is not a farmer. But why I say that they're a good animal for the farm and the agave farm and the cactus is that I pretty much have to keep them in sections that don't have young plants, like plants that I've just seeded, because they'll pluck them out the ground and just to play with them. They don't even eat them. And I would always get mad at them, and I'd just be like, "Man, why are you guys just hating on me?" But then I would fence up different areas and put them where there's adult plants. And with the adult cactus and agaves, I had amazing luck with the emus. I pretty much say that they're a goat version, or they're a bird combined with a goat because the emu
They're a
forages
boat.
pretty much as it. The emu pretty much forages exactly like a goat. It goes and eats all the weeds, eats all the shrubbery. Um, if a plant is large enough, like a cactus or agave, like maybe at 5 gallon stage, that it can't yank it out, and it's just like for instance, anything that's recently planted, it doesn't have roots, it could just yank it. But a year into the growth of that plant, uh, you can run the emus no problem in those fields, and they're gonna serve as great weed control. The emus and the goats, they have like these paws that kind of like sink down when they're running or walking. So I feel like there's also a good amount of aeration that's happening in the soil.
Oh yeah.
They have a lot of what do you call it? Like the emus in particular hate rats, ravens, ground squirrels. They'll chase anything that moves quickly,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
they'll eat it
So
all
not
up.
me when I'm
You
running because
know,
I move slowly.
the goat is not a predator, so he's not
Yeah.
going to do any of that. The emu,
Yeah.
I've seen it run and grab a rat and eat it, and or a ground squirrel, and it didn't. Sometimes it'll eat it, sometimes it'll just literally grab it and throw it like 10 feet,
I
and
bet
I'm
they
just
go for
like,
snakes too, huh?
oh, yeah, a lot of people mention that actually that they throw snakes and stuff. Like I've had I've had a emu like one time that I was like I pulled a piece of metal up and the emu was right next to me and there was a snake under it and it grabbed the snake and threw it at me and I'm just
Was it
What?
like,
a rattler?
uh
Was it a rattler
no,
snake?
it was like
Okay.
it was like a rat snake or
Okay.
what do you call it? I don't know exactly what the name of the snake is, but it's like there's all these smaller or a gopher snake.
Mm.
Yeah,
Gopher
gopher
snake, yeah.
snake. So, non-threatening snake, but still, like, it got me thinking, like, I probably don't want to be next to the emu.
Sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
need to
No.
that's
know what
them
an
right
emu
there.
was. Like this
So
conversation
emus,
was good, but
they kind of look like an ostrich a little
I
bit,
didn't know
but
what the fuck
They're
you were
cousins
talking
of the
about.
ostrich. Yeah,
they're so they seem a little harder to train and like they're just trouble.
they're harder to
Yeah.
train, but they're also, like I said, like the goat is an animal that is very, I would say, like rational. Like it knows when it's doing something wrong, and it knows like what it could get away with. Whereas the emu, because you can't control it, it's pretty much like nature. Okay, I can't control this. How can I just utilize the best of this uh, situation? And with the emus, it's just let them do what they want and try to run them in an area where what they're going to do is going to benefit you. Because you're not going to be able to train them. I don't I don't think so. But their natural way of doing things is not bad. I mean, it's a cool uh, way of life that they have. So
This is nightmare
You've
fuel.
got you've
This is
got some.
literal nightmare fuel.
Oh yeah, Marissa, imagine
they're super
a
fast too. They're like
herd of
45
those.
miles an hour. Yeah,
Yeah, a herd of those running towards you in the morning.
yeah.
No,
And
that's
start
worse than
pecking
the
at you.
subway. That is
Yeah.
worse than the bums in the subway. I will tell you.
So,
Because the
oh
bums
my
in the
God.
subway don't run well. Kind of like,
Yeah.
that's mean, but
So
true.
It's
yeah, the
already,
goats are a great resource on agave farms, I would say. And as they're not a common animal, so I feel like emu farming was big at one point in California, and ostrich farming, and it kind of went away,
And
and
then
now
they
it's starting to come
moved
back.
on.
they moved
They
on.
moved
So
on.
now
Speaking
people
of
are starting
moving
to
on,
want to raise them again. So
speaking of
yeah,
moving on, we are super over time, which is good in many ways because the conversation was awesome. We barely had any prompts. You can just talk, dude. You're good.
I
You're
feel
very
like
good
when
at
we
this.
talk to the California agave farmers, we could go on forever and ever.
You're very
Well,
good at this. And also,
and
like, quick plug, if you don't follow his page, you should go follow it because
yes.
just for the animal content alone, it's hilarious.
Mhm.
And he does these memes, and like I watched like goats chase him, and you have the best song choices, like the best song choices.
thank you, appreciate
So
it.
yeah, we're big fans.
I think
Um,
Marcus from Cantu Group said he was going to watch just for the animal like posts and stuff. But
Yeah,
hey,
100.
everybody
did,
loves animals. I have chickens and quails and ducks, and all of
oh
their
wow,
feelers and stuff are going into the farm as well.
that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah.
All
And
right.
did you ever learn how to wash the sap off yourself?
No, I just learned to not get it on myself,
So,
Like
Alan
now I could go
Camarena,
and harvest and have no issues, but I
oh
know
good.
like wear triple clothing and gloves and stay the heck away from freshly cut. But
If it ever happens again, Alan Camarena said just rinse off with warm water, rinse off all the sap, and don't use soap because it makes it worse, and just put aloe
that was
vera.
my experience.
Yeah, and then put aloe vera on yourself.
Yeah, that's
So,
what my aunt told me, like I got out of the shower and she's like, "Oh, you should have just put Savila." And I'm like, I don't know these recipes, man. I'm like, you got to tell me. I'm like,
you're
Wait,
Mexican and you
you
don't
so
have an
gotta
aloe vera plant at your
I
house.
have a lot of aloe vera plants now.
Yeah,
I'm
you
trying
can
to make
use
some
that.
spirits out of them.
Gian
Oh,
Nelson just said, and he's of Hano, he just said he'd love to work together in the future. And so that's like
there
a
you
really
go.
cool thing. So definitely
Yeah,
follow
yeah.
up with him. He's the shit. He
I
makes an
follow him. He's
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable
super cool.
product.
I gave him a lot of props on his bottle. I was telling him that the more information we could put on it, the better, because um, like for California and any agave spirit in America to get to the forefront of the agave industry or even compete, it's gonna need to be like the best, in my opinion. And like the more
Mm-hmm.
information you can tell consumers about why you are the best, then I think that's going to be really helpful for allowing the consumers to make the best decision. Because
Mm-hmm.
in California, we're like the epitome of this. People, they walk through Whole Foods, they're like, this is made here, I don't want it. This is GMO, I don't want it. This is,
Mm-hmm.
they want their coffee to be sustainable, they want their avocado oil to be sustainable. And if you can tell on the bottle, yo, I don't use pesticides, I don't use herbicides, I don't use any chemicals. We grow this added, or we don't use any additives. We don't, 100% California grown. All these factors of differentiation is what's going to allow us to, I think, uh, at least compete. You know,
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
tell
And I
people
think
all the time, like, people always
that
ask me, like,
transparency is all we're
do
ever
you think
asking
we'll make
for.
a better agave spirit in America than Mexico? And I say, probably not for a while, but I eventually believe that we will, because um, the amount of stuff that's going into that agave spirit here in California as far as sustainability, I think is really unmatched. Like,
Hmm.
that's, a lot of people are like, oh, I hate regulation, I hate red tape, but that's the one good side behind it. Like, when that comment that somebody posted on one of your videos about the regulation, like, Craig and me went in there and like, oh, the stuff that's already passed is legit.
Hmm.
We're already saying, hey, we don't want to have a spirit imported, or agaves imported from Arizona and distilled in California and called a California agave spirit. You could do that in Mexico. You could get from
Hmm.
another state, you could import it to Jalisco and say, this is distilled in Jalisco. You don't have to
Hmm.
say on the bottle where it came from. But I
Hmm.
mean, you could do your research and you'll find out. But they don't have to say it. And the same thing with the additives. Like, so many people are drinking, tequilas, mezcals, raicilla, sotol, bacanora, all these things, and they have,
Yeah, Soren in the
very
comments.
little
In the
additives.
comments, Soren, who runs an agave program at a retail location, a very, very selective retail location, so that
Yeah,
he has a Texas Sotol that he and his coworkers love. That's awesome. I actually really want to
yeah.
try that. That sounds cool.
Sotol is
So,
amazing. That, that's a spirit that, is also. It's like, that's the other thing. It's like Texas was a part of Mexico too, and like, the state of Chihuahua right across from Texas is like, been, at the forefront of producing sotol for a really long time. But when you look at the geography, more than likely those Native Americans were producing the same stuff in Texas. And when Texas became a state, that might have been forgotten, that might have been lost, but now they're
right.
starting to bring that back. And I've seen sotol farms in Texas that are, I don't know if they've produced a spirit yet, but there's
What's that,
growers,
Heidi?
and I've seen people that are
Oh, is
distilling
that
already
blasphemous?
sotol, in Texas. So that stuff, it's another part of the industry that I think is going to go up a lot. But that's not an agave. That's a different plant. But
That's a
it's
different
just
species,
it's
different
it's very
plant.
similar process and very similar culture and tradition. You
This
know.
is
Heidi,
a
are you
brand
holding
out of this
blasphemous?
is yeah out of Texas. Is an agave spirit. We had them on the show probably a
Probably
year ago
a
or
year.
over a year
Yeah.
ago. Yeah,
That's
but
legit.
and yeah, and they sent us 3 bottles. This is the blended with 7-year-old agave, but there's like
Oh,
two
nice.
other ones that we have, and it is yeah an American agave spirit is what they call it.
That's super
Damn.
cool. Yeah.
It was pretty good. I
Hmm.
still have the samples over there. Like, I never got a full bottle, but like, honestly, really good stuff. And I think that's the whole point, right? You can make
A lot of
quality
people don't know about
products.
those other ones, like the
Yeah.
Bacanora and the Sotol, the Raicilla.
Raicilla, I
Hmm.
love Raicilla.
People don't know about
Yeah.
that stuff yet,
It
but
helps with the biodiversity too, because obviously tequila is only the one species. So
yeah,
there's different components, and I think they're all gonna hopefully have their day.
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of their day, Heidi, next week, I'm assuming you booked this guy. Um, his name is, hold on, I just lost it. I had it. I had it. All right. Dave
I
Lathers. Dave
yes.
Lathers
And what is
of
it?
Magay Malate.
I think you had something to do with that. We've talked about this before, but we'll figure it out. I think we both have
That
something to
might
do
be
with it.
me.
But we
And
have
then
the samples. Uh-huh.
and then the
Yeah, I think
following week is a especial.
Espacial.
Cial.
Uh-huh.
Espacial, I am white. Quick
Uh-huh.
reminder. Then we've got Buen Agave, and we are done for the year. And then we move
That's
right into the following year. So we are in
Yeah, it's
December.
almost done.
We have
that's
3 more
crazy.
shows, and then it's 24, which is amazing.
I
Any
know.
What's
last
the
words? Any parting thoughts? I know we're already way
mm,
over. My only parting thought is like, you're awesome. It's awesome. Can't wait to follow you and see more stuff. Anything
Yep,
else to
me
say to
too.
our peeps?
I think, maybe just I will say that I'm really interested in seeing how agave will conquer the West, the Western United States, from, agaves like Sisal agave, and all these different agaves that are going to rival hemp one day. I think that agaves are not only going to produce amazing spirits, they're going to produce syrup and all types of different products. And I think there's going to be a renaissance in the desert of agave. A lot of farmers dry farming this agave. But yeah, I'll just leave people with that. We'll see how agave conquers the West.
I love that. Conquers the West. Heidi, any parting thoughts?
No, just follow Steve at It's Farming and Gardening California.
Farming and Gardening California.
I'll tag him in this post so you can follow him, because you will see some cool videos and learn a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you
I'm
so
more than
much.
welcome to always come back on and talk and stuff. I love talking about agave, and I have a bunch of notes that I wanted to talk about and stuff. And it's just like there's an insane. You could talk about this for days. So
Yes.
You can do it every week, just like we do. That's what you said.
Yeah,
we definitely want to have you. We'll have you back. Yeah, we'll have you back next year. Maybe we'll have like you and Adam and Gian at the same time or something. That'd be awesome.
Dream team, the dream team.
Yeah,
that would be cool. I think we should do more California episodes. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah.
Heidi, what do we tell them? Heidi, what do we say every week?
Every week we say we'll see you next and every Tuesday.
All right, now you got to sign us off from the Tequiladies account. But
okay.
Yep, that's the only rub. But we'll see you next.
Every
Tuesday.
Have a great rest of the night and enjoy
you too.
Your spirits.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Cheers, sir.
Cheers.